Hello and a very warm welcome back to the garden. It is now mid-March and things are beginning to ramp up. Now, one of the dangers about springtime is that all we're focusing on are the summer crops. So things like peas and tomatoes, we just can't wait to eat them. But one of the dangers of that is that when we come to June and July, we start thinking about, okay, autumn is approaching and then winter. And then suddenly we realize it's too late. We've missed the opportunity to prepare for winter, because the issue with a lot of the winter crops is that they almost need the entirety of a growing season to grow and mature and become ready for winter. So in this video, I'm going to outline and talk about 15 crops that you can sow in spring, and I'm going to tell you when to sow all of these crops. 15 crops that you can sow in spring for winter harvest, and also many of these will move into the hungry gap. So this ensures that you can have abundance right throughout your growing season. So the first crop to grow is going to be beetroot. This is a real staple for me. Now, in terms of beetroot for winter harvest, you want to start them off around late April all the way through May and grow them so they're big and mature, because beetroot can sit in the ground pretty well. It should be fine, especially in climates like zone 7, zone 8, to stay in the ground up until December, when you can keep on pulling it. So that means that you've got those early winter harvests. Now, if you want to think about extending it, you can actually cover these beetroot with straw, and you should also be able to start harvesting beetroot throughout January as well. Now, with beetroot, you can also leave some in and they will start providing a leafy crop again in March, which you can eat. So that is beetroot. The second crop are going to be carrots, and I would go for more of a main crop carrot variety, or any one that is known for autumn harvest or winter harvest. The thing about carrots, you want to start these off at the same time as beetroot, so that's late April, then throughout May. And carrots, I find, can stay and last in the soil a lot longer than beetroot. So you can expect to be harvesting carrots by pulling them out of the ground up until at least the end of January. The third crop is something that you might not consider as part of your winter abundance and hungry gap plan, but that is going to be turnips. Turnips are amazing because if you start them off right towards the end of spring, grow them up and let them grow big on purpose. Now, turnips are remarkably hardy, and what you'll find towards the end of winter, they'll start to send up loads of fresh edible leaves. In fact, I've got turnips here that are going to start flowering. They've got their flowering shoots, and those are really nice, really succulent to add into salads with a bit of spice. Now, something else with turnips is, even if they do go woody, you can make a really nice, and Sam, who is a professional chef and he's a guy behind the camera, he mentioned that with woody turnips you can make a really nice cream of turnip soup. So we'll be looking at maybe sharing a recipe of that sometime. The fourth crop is actually a herb, and I'm trying to be a bit cautious because I haven't got that much left before it sends its new flourish of growth, and that is parsley. Last year I grew parsley all around the garden, and I was remarkably impressed with how hardy it was, and I was harvesting a lot of parsley even in January outside. I've now left that alone so I can get that resurge of growth before it runs to seed in spring. But it's just really nice to have that kind of green herb, fresh herb taste in the depths of winter, when usually we just think about using dried herbs. So with parsley, I'd start this any point in April time, plant it out, enjoy the harvest right through the season, and then save it for winter. Now, I'll just quickly mention, in terms of parsley, I would always try and go for the curly leaf parsley because I know this works really well in terms of winter hardiness. The fifth crop is going to be leeks, and I have to say that not just because I am in Wales and it's our national vegetable, but also because I think it is perhaps, out of this whole group of vegetables, it's the most underrated on a personal level, because I love eating leeks. I eat them right through winter. They are so hardy and they're so tasty. You don't need to do much to get a lot of beautiful, sweet, nutritious flavour from leeks. Just roast them. It's super simple. So you can start leeks off from right at the beginning of March all the way through to the end of April, even into early May. You can start them off in a seed bed and then transplant them. Usually after you've harvested your potatoes, you can put your leeks in there and then grow them. Now there are different varieties, so you can get certain varieties of leeks that are just for earlier on in the winter, like this one here is a Bulgarian giant leek. But then you have leeks that will last you all the way through into March, and it's March now and I'm still harvesting leeks. The next crop is going to be swede, or if you're in the US, I believe it's called rutabaga. Swede is very underrated as well. The great thing about swede is you can start these off in April and May. They can start maturing right through the growing season and grow to a really big size, and then they'll just sit in the ground right through winter. So whether it's in December or March, you can just go into the garden and harvest what you need. Now you can also keep some back to then get a load of swede to start producing leaves during the hungry gap. So again, you're getting more really precious leafy greens when usually leafy greens are quite rare. The next crop is a quintessential winter staple, and that's going to be your parsnips. Now parsnips are a little tricky to start in terms of germination. The trick is to actually make sure that the seeds don't dry out when you've put them in the ground. Make sure that there's constant moisture and they will germinate just fine. Now parsnips again are one of those crops that you can harvest throughout the winter months from December through to March. You can see that they're beginning to go leafy and perhaps a bit woody, but I can still use these, and again I could make a cream of parsnip soup here. So yeah, start them off mid to late April, let them grow right the way through the growing season, and then you'll have parsnips coming out of your ears. The next crop is perhaps a little more unusual, but it's very closely related to parsnips, and that is salsify. You just follow the exact same process for parsnips. These create this kind of, they're less productive than parsnips, but it's something interesting to try, and they're just as hardy. And you might find that salsify is easier to grow than parsnips. So give it a go, treat them just like parsnips in terms of when to sow and when to harvest, and you've got yourself another crop to fit in. The ninth crop is oca, which is also known as New Zealand yam. This is more of a crop that you harvest right at the beginning of winter. So the idea is you let it get frosted as a plant, the leaves will die down, then wait around 4 to 6 weeks and then harvest them. So you can harvest them up until Christmas, that's what I'd recommend. And you've got loads of really vibrant tubers that you can make curries out of, you can roast them, they're really fun to cook with. Another tuber is going to be your Jerusalem artichokes, also known as sunchokes. You can see that this one is actually beginning to grow because we are into mid-March. The great thing about these is that they're perennials. You can treat them like oca as well. So the idea with oca and Jerusalem artichokes is that you always save a few tubers back and then you plant them. With oca, you want to make sure that you plant them after the risk of frost has passed. But with Jerusalem artichokes, you can just leave them in the ground. So harvest a plant, leave a tuber where you harvested it, and it will come back year after year. And again, this is something that you can harvest right through December into early March. Crop number 11 is going to be Swiss chard. And Swiss chard is great, especially if you have an undercover growing area, because you can actually keep on cropping it right through winter. What you will tend to find if you're growing it outside is after kind of the end of December has passed, you don't really get any leaf production. It kind of freezes. But what happens is that this is actually a fantastic hungry gap crop, because now kind of mid-March onwards it's going to send up a flourish of new leaves. And unlike spinach, which tastes a little bit funny when it starts to bolt, with Swiss chard you can continuously harvest the leaves even when it's setting seed. It doesn't go hard and tough, and that's a real nice thing about Swiss chard. So start sowing these around April and May, and then you can have those crops in early winter and then in the hungry gap. The next crop is more for a crop for the hungry gap, and that is going to be purple sprouting broccoli. And you want to make sure that you choose the early varieties. So the early means that they're going to start off in early spring. So you start them off actually back in April or May, so you want to start them off April or May this year with the early varieties, grow them right through the season. During winter you can naturally harvest some of the younger leaves, and you can treat them just like kale or cabbage if you want to, but then make sure that you leave enough leaves so it has the energy to send up all of these beautiful spurs of purple sprouting broccoli. Sticking with the theme of brassicas after the purple sprouting broccoli, the final 3 of the 15 crops that you can start off in spring for those winter and hungry gap harvests are going to be Brussels sprouts, winter cabbage, and also kale. So these can all be started around April time, and then you can transplant them into their final growing position around 8 to 10 weeks later when they have around 3, 4, 5 true leaves. Now with Brussels sprouts, chances are you're only going to be harvesting these up until kind of early January, because this is more of the front end of winter. Then you've got winter cabbage, which you can harvest right throughout winter. And then you've got kale, which you can harvest all through the year. You can harvest the leaves throughout winter, that's absolutely fine, but what I like to do is to let them grow and then harvest the shoots, the flower shoots that kale give off from end of March throughout into early May, just as a nice hungry gap crop and something different to enjoy. So if you forgot to grow purple sprouting broccoli, you can use kale as a backup for that. Those are 15 crop ideas that you need to make sure that you sow in spring just to not miss out, because it happened last year with me when I was doing intuitive gardening. I forgot the planning aspect, or on purpose didn't do the planning aspect, and I really missed out on the winter abundance, because by June I was thinking about it and then I suddenly realized that I missed the boat. So these are 15 things that you can start now to make sure that you have an abundance of food to last you throughout winter. And I think that winter food is really underrated, because there's nothing better than having something fresh from the garden, because usually during winter we opt to then buy things from the store in the supermarket because there's less in the garden. But when we can really increase the productivity of our garden throughout that time, we're not just going to get tastier food, we're also going to save ourselves a lot of money.